Very cryptic. We'll explain because we're joined by our senior political editor, Steve Chaggaris, and CBSN political contributor, Nomiki Konst, who is also a Bernie Sanders supporter. So, Steve, to you first. How much damage is Hillary Clinton's primary fight doing to her general election aspirations?
I mean, damage, I don't know if that's the right word, but here's what's going on, right? We're talking about unity within the parties, right? GOP unity. We spent all last week talking about Republican unity, Donald Trump meeting with Paul Ryan, and how'd that go, and are they going to get the Republicans together? Well, we're starting to see that Republicans are actually coalescing around Trump's nomination. Clinton can't do that yet because Sanders is there. He's still winning states. He's still winning delegates. And yes, she's at some point going to clinch this nomination, but the longer it takes, the less unity there is within the Democratic Party. And they're talking about issues at a different level. You're seeing Sanders supporters get really fired up about what's happening.
More than fired up. In Nevada, it was...
Right, but the longer he continues to win and the more he has a megaphone, that makes him relevant in this race. And she can't just dispense with him. And as much as she tries to focus on Trump, and you hear her on the stump talking about Donald Trump, she still has to deal with Bernie Sanders and Sanders' supporters, people who she's going to need in November to vote for her.
And she's still pivoting towards the election right now. We know that she's come forward talking about how Bill Clinton will have a huge role in her economic policies. We know that he did well in the 90s, but it wasn't just him. There were a series of issues, things that really helped pivot him. One was the dot-com boom. The other, of course, was the Asian economic crisis, financial crisis that helped a region in Asia really get their business policy and banking structure together. Is he really going to be the savior for the economy here?
I don't know about that, and I think that there's a tale of two economies from the Clinton years. There's the Wall Street economy, the global economy, globalization, and the corporatization of our country. You know, taking large businesses and putting them overseas, repealing Glass-Steagall. You know, a lot of that stuff from the 90s, which on the surface looked great, but below the surface was not so great for the average worker. Much like the position we are today. And I think that actually hurts Hillary Clinton's argument, especially as she tries to woo the working class white voters who Senator Sanders has a lockdown on right now, and their second choice is Donald Trump. So I'm not sure how that messaging is going to play well to them because they're the ones who don't like NAFTA because all those factories closed down in the 90s and the early 2000s. They're the ones who felt hurt after the boom bust and the housing market crashed. A lot of that was set in place by the Clinton administration and their policies. So I'm not sure how that message is going to play out to Democratic voters. I definitely don't think it's going to play well to independents or working class Reagan-esque types of Democrats.
The old Reagan Democrats, we used to call them, right? Yeah. Let's throw up that tweet that Donald Trump just tweeted earlier today about the fact that Hillary Clinton is considering Bill Clinton to be in charge of the economy, make him an economy czar or whatever, because I want the viewers to look at that again because it's interesting. At the very end, he says something about the Energizer. And you'd have to be very familiar if you read sort of these insider-y political blogs and things, what Donald Trump is referring to. Who wants to take that?
I'll take it. So there was a book written a couple years ago about the Secret Service by a guy named Ronald Kessler, who's written books about
the FBI,
secret behind the scenes. And there was an anecdote in there that there was a woman who used to visit Chappaqua when Hillary Clinton wasn't around and spend the day with Bill Clinton. This is, again, alleged in this book.
Right.
And the Secret Service allegedly referred to her, their nickname for her was Energizer. Now, what's interesting is the guy who wrote this book is a big Trump supporter. Right. So it's interesting to know that
I didn't know.
To know that, right? So Trump's getting, I'm sure, getting some info on the side from the author, Ron Kessler, about, hey, you're just, this Energizer thing's out there. And so that's where the Energizer nickname comes from.
And he plants these stories through innuendo that people have to explain on camera. So, while people reading the tweet may not know all of them, but it opens.
It gets us talking about it, right? Exactly. And it goes back to the question you asked about Bill Clinton, right? Now, you're going to bring him into your administration. He's going to be part of your administration. Well, it also becomes part of your campaign. And the question to voters is, do they want to see a Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton race, or do they want to see a Hillary Clinton race? Does this undercut her argument that she's going to be the first woman president, she's going to do this on her own when she brings Bill Clinton into this? And we've known this for months, that Trump is going to hammer Bill Clinton for the next 6 months on this stuff, about his controversies and both of their controversies, frankly, but his specifically. This is not going to go away. This is going to be something he's going to continue to hammer.
Was this a misstep in your analysis by Hillary Clinton saying that Bill might sort of have a strong hand in the economy? Because he was very popular, and as the impeachment process happened, his approval ratings actually went up. People were supportive of Bill Clinton.
It's a short-term play. She has to win. In their minds, they have to win Kentucky today, right, in order to sort of try to start putting Sanders behind them. Because if they don't win anything today, you're now a few weeks away before you're winning again, because June 7th are the next primaries. So she wins Kentucky. How does she win Kentucky? She appeals to them by bringing up Bill Clinton, the successes he has. It's a more conservative, more moderate Democratic electorate. So that's the play. But long term, it raises a lot of questions, as I pointed out. You're going to bring him now into the fold. He's going to be part of your campaign. He's going to be fair game for people like Trump and whoever else.
And she's been running a campaign against against Bill Clinton's record of the 90s. That's something that, she's looking at slivers of populations as she goes, very short term. A few weeks ago she was talking about how she was going to put the coal mining industry out of business, and now she's redacting that and retracting what she was saying then. So, and that's the issue between running a primary and running a general election. Either way, I don't really think the Bill Clinton argument is going to work, because it will come down to that working class white vote, and he might be a little bit more popular. I think he's at 62% in favorabilities right now, as opposed to her 40s in the 40s. I think as the campaign goes on and as Donald Trump hits hard on Bill Clinton, that number will go down. Don't forget, he's had a few fits too. He's not the Bill Clinton of the 90s. He's gotten in arguments with protesters. He's gotten a little snippy on the campaign trail. I think that his persona has shifted, as well as within the Democratic Party, as well as with the independent electorate that he used to.
It's interesting to mention Bill Clinton today, especially because the West Virginia electorate looks very much like Kentucky, working class white folks. So, Steve, how is this going to play out if they lose today? They lost in West Virginia. That was expected.
The big difference is independents aren't voting in Kentucky. It's a closed primary. It's just Democrats, and she has done very, very well in closed primaries. And so you look at what happened in West Virginia last week. They doubled the number of independent voters in the Democratic primary than they had from the previous, from 2008. And so that helped Sanders a lot. He won significantly among independent voters. No independent voters today.
But the last poll he was leading in Bernie Sanders, just to be fair, by about, I think, 7 points, 43%. In Kentucky.
Right, but my point is, it's going to be harder for him to win, because no independents will be voting in this primary. So that's the difference between, you can't really compare West Virginia and Kentucky.
And looking ahead to Oregon too tonight, it's also very positive for Bernie Sanders. It's a group of white Americans who tend to lean more towards Bernie Sanders. How could that shake out for Hillary tonight?
Well, again, we don't have any real public polling. There's one poll that suggests that she's up significantly, but again, that's one poll. We don't know if that's an outlier or not. Secondly, it's a closed primary. Again, no independents can vote in Oregon. And it's a vote by mail scenario, right? And so people who have registered, and Bernie Sanders has done a great job of getting people to register to vote in Oregon, and there are numbers to back this up, that he's brought more people into the system. But the problem is you register to vote at the DMV, and you register as an independent. And so if you haven't changed your registration by April 26th, then you can't vote in the primary. And so the question is, how many of those new voters that might vote for Sanders are actually eligible to vote in the Democratic primary? We don't know the answer to that question. So there are a lot of wild cards in both of these races, and we don't know because we don't have any good polling. So she could win both, she could lose both, but Sanders has advantages in both places too.
Nomi, there's an article out on Medium about the Sanders campaign and about how angry they were about losing Nevada. They allege that there were some improprieties there. There were a lot of people that were very, very angry. There's even, I think we have an ad, perhaps some sound of people. There it is. So that's the article. It's interesting because Donald Trump has said in some cases that a lot of his supporters are similar to Bernie Sanders supporters. I know you're a Sanders supporter. You're probably thinking you are so far away from where he is on issues. But the anger that he's tapped into is similar to the anger that some say Bernie Sanders has tapped into. Why has he been so slow? I know before the Nevada thing, Harry Reid asked him to put out something, but he's been very slow to react to some of these things that we've seen in the aftermath. Why is that?
Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, Bernie's in a very tough position because he's working with the party. He's running a campaign as a Democrat. His supporters, many of them are independents, many of them are disaffected Democratic Party members, and many of them are new voters. So they don't have the same allegiances to the Democratic Party that, say, someone like I do. I mean, I've been a Democrat for a long time, and I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. So I talk about things like reforming the party. And I think that's what Bernie Sanders' message is. A lot of these people, if you listen to some of those speeches at the convention, the way that they changed the rules just by decision making, even though there was a vote on the floor and the Bernie Sanders vote won, there's no way you could have discounted that. But there was the chair decided to change the rules mid-process and give those delegates to Hillary Clinton. And that's frustrating for even Hillary Clinton supporters who know that that there needs to be some reforms in the DNC, and the majority of Sanders supporters who feel like they've been discounted from the democratic process, that the DNC rules have been stacked in the favor of Hillary Clinton along the way, whether legitimately so or not. I think that this situation was just outstanding. It was something that.
You don't think we're going to see this play out in other races?
Well, this has happened a few times already. I mean, it's great that everybody has camera phones now so they can show it along the way, but I mean, it happened in Colorado, it happened in Arizona, New York has had there's been some fuss here. But I also see it happening at
sorry to interrupt you. I also want to take it to Donald Trump also. The fact that Tony Fabrizio, a very well-known GOP pollster, is now coming on to the campaign. What does this mean for Trump's campaign?
Well, it's interesting because Trump has said, I don't need polls, I don't need pollsters. He hasn't really been driven at all by pollsters. But I think what they're going to do with Fabrizio is bring him on board and get him some data to work with. I mean, you know, they're trying to switch this into a professional campaign mode. You have a Republican Party that needs him now. He's at the top of the ticket. He needs to work within this system, and so maybe he won't follow this, this lead of Fabrizio, but to have him on board, bringing real data in, I think is a necessary thing for a professional campaign to do. I think Trump is realizing that, and that's why he's on board.
All right, lots to continue talking about. We know that you guys are going to be around all day because it is a big night. Thank you very much.
Right?
Yeah, exactly,
Big night.
exactly. Huge night. Steve Chaggaris, Nomiki Konst, thank you very much.